2. And welcome everybody to another episode of This Uncanny Earth, your place for all the paranormal goodness that you could possibly find. As always, I am your host, Robert Solomon, and with me to the right is, well, to my right. I don't know how this, because it goes like
I got to do the
this.
opposite now because you switched us on the cameras.
Switch this
So
on the
now I got to
cameras.
do this because normally I just go there because that's where I see you.
Yes.
But I got to go there.
But tonight we have a very special guest. You guys didn't think we had guests anymore. We got guests. We got guests for days.
And I
Ladies
was
and
wrong.
gentlemen.
I was wrong earlier backstage. It wasn't episode 53. It was from episode 58, which is still
58.
pretty early. Pretty
If we
early
did
out there.
10 more episodes, we would 100% be there 200 episodes later. So, ladies and gentlemen, from Paranormal Experience, we have our very own Kat Hobsen.
Hey.
Hey, Kat. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. You know, I had not realized just how long it had been, but I am so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
So, for the viewers that don't know who you are, please tell them a little bit about yourself.
Oh, well, I own WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Paranormal Talk Radio. I am the host of Paranormal Experience with Kat Hobsen for almost 10 years now. And I am also the host of Faith Magazine Radio, and I have been doing that for over 4 years now. And I'm a paranormal investigator. I have been on Portals to Hell for their season 2 premiere. My friend owns the old Paulding Jail, and I had a really wacky, pretty intense experience there. So they shared that and did their own investigation at the jail, which was fantastic. But I am always looking for events. I do ufology as well. I did Contact in the Desert earlier this year, which was fantastic, except that the day the whistleblower was talking in Congress, the day that the report broke, right? I am sitting in Ontario Airport outside of LA, getting on a plane, so I can't talk to anybody about it.
Right.
I've just been in the place with the best ufologists on the planet, as well as some additional research too. But that's what Contact in the Desert is about. Well, UFO contact and also consciousness and personal growth and everything that is good for you. So it was really a weird turn of events because I am live streaming from the airport going, I can't talk about that. Right. That was the longest flight. And of course it was coming from California to Alabama. So it took a hot minute.
Yeah, that's probably about 4 or 5 hours.
Roughly. That's probably about 7 or 8 hours. Because I have to go to Atlanta. Of course, as my grandma used to say, if you're going to heaven or hell and you're using Delta, you're going through Atlanta. So that holds true today.
Yep.
So what did you think about that when they testified before Congress? I watched that whole 2-hour long discussion, and all I heard was a lot of redacted. We could talk about this off record. We'll talk about that off record. We'll talk about that other thing off record. They didn't really say anything that caught my attention, except when he mentioned biological units. That's the only thing that really okay, I see what you did there. I get it.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it was just redacted. We'll talk about it after this. Redacted.
Yeah. The best part I thought was I already had heard this conversation, but not from that same individual a couple of years ago. And so I couldn't believe it was coming forward because that's the biggest. We've got to apologize, guys. We've been lying for 40 years, but hey, 70 years. Yeah. And actually more than that because there were incidents prior to Roswell. But, it's just so astounding to me that this guy who I had heard lecture 2 years before at another conference, as well as some other people in his position, was just up there telling it. And when the story broke in the papers, and Leslie King I am just going to say, holy cow, if I ever wanted to grow up and be a journalist, if I were somebody starting out, I would look at her. I would also look at Linda Moulton Howe. They have been on this story since they started work. And, you know, it's just amazing to me. I mean, for young women who think that this is a man's field, nothing really is anymore. But these people were doing this when it was. And they are both fierce. And so is everybody else that's been on this, like, you know, whatever. Nothing I can think of is appropriate. But, you know, this is a big, hairy deal because if you lay back, I'm a hammock layer and I love meteor showers. If you lay back and you watch, there's a lot of stuff out there that's moving in our sky that is way beyond the height of our jets and normal aircraft. And, you know, I have a little thing that if it's non-military, non-classified, I know what satellites are over me. And, you know, it's really bizarre. In fact, last spring, my husband was inside and I was so excited because I had never seen Starlink, right? And I came bouncing into the house like, oh my gosh, I just saw the Starlink. And he was like, oh, that's great. Well, one of my friends is a very good astrologer. And so I messaged him and I was like, what are the minimum number of links in a Starlink? Because I thought I remembered him telling someone that, you know, there were two craft moving together. And he said, oh, well, that's Starlink. Well, apparently I was mistaken because they have a great many.
Mm-hmm.
And they're getting bigger because they're having to help people in, you know, areas get internet.
It's like a cloud of it, basically, like 10 to 12 or more sometimes, I guess.
Usually in the 20s. You know, when I was out in California, they were going over us when we were doing our night sky tour with Mark D'Antonio and Ben Hansen. And it was a lot. There were, I think, 26. So my arm thing was too high. But it's just really fascinating to me because when I messaged and I was like, there were two and they looked like interior lighting of white plastic milk bottles, you know, that kind of luminescence. But there were two of them and they had like a tin can shape, like a soup can. And so the shape was right for what I thought, but there would never be two, I was told. So I don't know what I saw, but I was so disappointed that it wasn't Starlink that I forgot basically about what it could be. So, you know, there you go. But it was pretty interesting because I just love having adventures like that. And to be by myself on my deck in the middle of the night, that was a pretty good adventure. So
that reminds me of like 2020 when everything was locked down and everybody was at home. I was out in the middle of the day and I was just sitting on my the porch swing that I have in the back, and I looked up and there was, I don't know if you ever seen Journey or Flight of the Navigator.
Uh-huh.
So the old Disney movie with the way the ship was formed.
Yeah.
I looked up in the sky and I saw that very same ship. 2 weeks later, I saw the exact same thing. It moved. So like if you look in the sky, obviously it moved probably like from where my thumb is to where my index finger is, right? It disappeared for a brief stint and then it reappeared over here. Did the same thing that 2 weeks later, like 2 weeks to the day later. About the same time, about 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon, roughly.
Oh, I had my first experience at about that time of day. Did you have any eye clouds around that? Was it just a clear? I mean,
no, there was clouds.
Was it what?
Yeah.
Did they have a funny color?
Not that I could tell. I mean, I couldn't tell you if they did because I was too like fixated on the
craft,
actual object itself. I was like, that doesn't look like anything I've ever seen before. The way it looked, I was like, that looks like just like the ship from Flight of the Navigator. I was like, it looks exactly like that ship. And when it disappeared, I was like, oh, okay. You know, my first thought was, well, it's high up in the air. You know, if it's too high up, obviously my eyes can't go up that high. But then when it reappeared, Like it was about that far. I mean, obviously that's going to be a lot farther in the sky than
sure,
it
yeah,
is on my
but
fingers. So when it reappeared, I was like, oh, well, that's different. But then when I saw it 2 weeks later, I was like, oh, this is something that I have to wonder why I was in that position at that time of day 2 weeks later to see that. Like I get
maybe
the
it was
first
there
time
other
being
times.
there.
Maybe it was there other days too.
Yeah, and I just didn't think about it, but I just happened to be like, wait. I was like, I just saw that. I literally just saw this same object 2 weeks ago go across the sky, disappear, did the same exact thing that it did the first time. It went probably like about that far, and then it disappeared, and then it reappeared down here. And that I haven't seen anything like that since. But I saw it, and then I saw it 2 weeks later. It was probably, if I had to say, maybe May or June of 2020. So everything was locked down, and I wasn't doing nothing. So I just sat up outside and just was looking at the sky, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And then when I saw it again 2 weeks later, I was like, that's something that's different. That's something different to me. I don't know."
Yeah, the reason I asked about the clouds is that I was again outside, but it was middle of the day, and we have a gazebo in our backyard. But I was on the deck in a hammock. I know people think I never get out of my hammock, but I really do. But I was just laying there on the phone with my daughter, and there was this weird. I asked about the cloud because there was this really weird, very large, yellowish, greenish cloud. Well, here, green clouds, and that means tornadoes, right? But it was a perfect sunny day. And I was watching it, and I got really uncomfortable. So I was just like, don't hang up.
Right.
If you don't hear me, don't hang up, because there's this really weird looking thing. And so it was low enough that it was almost touching my gazebo, and which was like right at the tree line. And I thought, oh, maybe somebody's on fire or something. But I didn't smell anything. And so I'm sitting there and I'm talking to Allie, and it looked like, and this is when I really thought I was losing my mind, right? Because it was so cliche, but it looked like a pie tin, like coming out of the cloud, but upside down. And I thought, oh, this is so, 1940s, 1950s sci-fi. People are never going to believe this. I'm not telling anybody this happened. And I didn't for a really long time. I mean, she knew because she was on the phone with me, but crazy. I have used MUFON's reporting system about things that I've seen also, like during meteor showers and stuff. They like to come and just park and watch too, I guess. I don't know. But they're pretty consistent with that. Excuse me. But the pie thing, I was like, don't hang the phone up. If I get disconnected, I don't care. Just don't hang the phone up. And she stayed with me because I was pretty concerned. But the weird thing was it eased out, like just enough for me to see it. And then it just kind of went back into the cloud, and the cloud didn't dissipate. It moved away. And I thought, nobody is ever going to believe I don't drink in the afternoons.
Yeah, and you're on a hammock, it's over for that. They were like, she was on a hammock. Oh, she was 100%. She was
toasted
drinking.
and roasted. Yeah.
Come on. In the sun, just that was it. Lights out. Hang it up.
Parrot head too, so that kind of rolls into that. So.
Right. Well, I think it's interesting that people have seen these things, like my instance of seeing the same, that seed-shaped craft, and it looked like Flight of the Navigator, when really they have been putting these things in front of our faces via science fiction shows, movies, comics, all that. They've been putting that in front of our face for 50, 60, 70 some odd years. Yes. So when you see it, you're like, this looks like that, like you said, that like some generic sci-fi movie. Well, that's why they gave it to you back in the 40s and 50s, because that's what they look like. So of course, if they give it to you early enough, and you're fed it your whole life, because I'm a big fan of that era of science fiction, 40s, 50s, the radio programs, all of that. Love it. I go to bed to it at night. Like I put in my ear and listen to it when I go to bed. If they give it to you early enough, of course, that when you see one, you're like, but then when you realize, oh, they have been giving this to us for the past 70 years.
Yes.
That makes sense. Because what better way to put it into the population than via our entertainment? Our entertainment systems, our cartoons, our movies, our television shows, all of that. People are like, I love Star Trek. You prepare the brain, because this way it makes it easier if you see it. Because imagine if this was like 1800s when they actually did, there are actually records of crafts that people did see back then, but they were even more like, this is crazy. This isn't something that, we're God-fearing people. I don't know what this is, the devil, because they couldn't comprehend. You can't comprehend something advanced if you don't have a pathway to its advancement. You're stuck.
No frame of reference.
None. So you're like, what is this flying cloud? Is this God? Is this God, or, whatever, what have you? But what I found to be fascinating is as we move along, they just put it in front of us, because they figure, well, it's easier if we put it in front of them, because then if people go and say something like, I saw this, like you said, the pie tin, they're like, oh, you're just up late watching too many, whatever. You're up to watching Mystery Science Theater too late at night, or whatever.
Kind of inoculates you a little bit. So
well, it does. And it makes it easier for people to poo-poo the notion that you actually saw something.
Yep.
Because obviously this was just something that was familiar to you. So your mind created from,
And I think it's interesting too. Like, I don't know how much you know about the whole "we live in a matrix" theory.
A bit.
But by creating that the life that you have, like right now, and you're like, and you wholly believe in UFOs and all of that, people would think, well, she just created that because that is her own reality. Yeah. So you were able to create that. But to me, I think is if you believe in something strong enough, whatever that thing is that you believe in will reveal itself to you at some point. It just depends how much you believe and how far you're willing to go,
and why you believe,
and why. I think that's
why that's a thing that you took upon yourself.
I agree,
because you have to have a frame of reference though for that to occur.
I agree, because most people, like, the funny thing about most people is that they don't. I mean, I think it's bigger now than it used to be when we were kids or when we were growing up. But like now, everybody's looking up for UFOs. But when we were younger, nobody was. And if you did, you were labeled an outcast if you talked about it.
Yeah.
My grandmother saw a UFO when she was a kid. My dad told me like 2 years ago. And this was after my grandma had passed. So I was like, what? He's like, yeah. And she said that it touched down in a farm when she was walking. I forget where she was walking from. But she was walking to a place and she happened to see this UFO and it touched down on the farm, and her friend went over to look at it, and then it took off and went out. Yeah. I just found out about that about 2 years ago. So I can't ask her because she died when I was like 8 years old. So there was no like me going back like, hey, so what happened? But yeah. Right. So maybe it's something that runs in the family. Be odd enough.
Yeah. I'm a paranormal investigator too. I think you probably could ask her.
That's possible.
If that was something that mattered enough to you to do so, but I really think that that's something that happens. So, but I'm me, so
same. Like I agree. When I saw that when I saw it first, I was like, because my brain's automatically gonna go, okay, let's rule out whatever it could be, so that if it is that, fine. That doesn't bother me none, but it wasn't what I thought it was, because it's weird that I saw the same thing at the same time 2 weeks later. Almost like
so weird. I mean, that's almost like it was trying to validate for you.
Facts. That's what got me. If I'd have saw it once, I'd have been like, okay, cool, whatever. Maybe it was a ship, or maybe it was something government, because the government has tech that's like 20, 30 years advanced from what we see today. I mean, that's only obvious. They work on stuff that we will never, ever be able to understand or ever see unless they want to take one of us out. But the interesting part is it wasn't the fact that I saw it the first time, it was the fact that I saw it the second time at darn near the exact same time of day.
With the same behavior.
Same exact. And it might have been even in the same position or relatively close to that same position. So the fact that whatever knew that I was looking at it the second time, that's what, and I never saw it again. And from that point on, I've always looked up just to see if maybe I'll get a glimpse of it.
Right.
But it was just enough for me to be like, oh, okay, so maybe I should keep pressing on this and to see where it leads.
And I haven't thought to ask you this. It's just kind of popped up now all of a sudden. I don't know why I have not asked you this before. The direction it was in maybe could even be an indicator of what it was scoping out, because we have in this area, we got Akron Canton Airport,
Right.
kind of at the crossroads where you are and where I am and where
Roughly.
Akron is. So was it anywhere in that direction, or was it just didn't think about it?
From what I believe, if we're looking at my backyard, so we're going to reverse directions because I'm facing the front yard. So if I'm right, Akron Canton sits this way, but oddly enough, there's another airport that sits over here, which is
that
where
little
the
one
craft was. There's a little smaller airport that sits over here where the craft was. If I'd like draw a line down from where the craft was flying down to the earth itself, it would be pinpointed right there. So that's what it could have been watching that airport. For what, I don't know, but I mean, what better way to do something under the guise of something else than by going to a smaller airport? I mean, that'd be the smart way to do it. Smaller airport, you got smaller planes, lower airspace, you move quietly enough, you're fine. Nobody's looking out for that. So that's a possibility.
How big do you think it was?
If I had to guess, I would say it was the same size as the ship from Flight of the Navigator. I would say roughly. If I had to guess, obviously it was about that big to me, but if it landed, that's what I would presumably think, that it would have the same size. So maybe, if I had to guess, trying to equate my feet, maybe like 15, 20 feet. It didn't look very massive.
Not as large as a jet.
Probably bigger. Well, how big is a jet?
I don't know, but
like a fighter jet. Probably bigger. I think I would say a little bit bigger than a fighter jet. I would say maybe a little bit longer, definitely wider than a fighter jet, because a fighter jet's kind of sleek. It's got the two wings.
They're very thin.
And this one was like it was. If you've ever seen a sunflower seed, it was about that shape. Maybe a little bit wider, but about the shape of a sunflower seed.
Yeah. Well, that's so interesting, though, because the fact that you had that it was repetitive for you, that's kind of, because during particular meteor showers, not all of them, if I'm sitting outside watching for them, I get out there with a blanket and snuggle down into the chair and just sit there and watch the show. And there's I have a mountain behind my house, and one comes from one side of it, one comes from the other side of the house, and they just go and they stop. That's why I know it's not a satellite, right? The motion is obvious, but it's not bright like a meteor, and it stops. And they're stopped in constellations, and they stay there. I guess they're watching the show too, or they're watching us watch the show, or whatever, because there's a lot of people out sky watching on those nights. And that's the only really repetitive thing that I've had, but it does happen enough that I was talking with someone at the Scientific Coalition on UAP Studies about it. And they're like, well, we just need to get cameras on your deck. I was like, well, you're welcome to, or just tell me what to use to do that. Yeah, I don't mind doing my own thing. But, I think that's very weird. But, we like them. Why wouldn't they? And if it showed up as a craft shape that you were familiar with, which I found pretty cool too.
Right.
How did they know that you would know what that was if you're going into our experiences are being programmed toward us?
Right.
Going with the whole Matrix thing. So it's something to contemplate.
And I've taken, time out of days and just sat there and just remembered seeing it, trying to figure out what it was, trying to ascertain exactly what I saw. And I hadn't been drinking or nothing like that. I was doing nothing. It was I was normally just sitting outside. It was a nice day. I figured I'll sit outside and look up at the sky, and then happened to see it twice. The first time, like I said, I could write off the first time. It was like, oh, okay. But the second time, to see that same thing do the same thing that it did the first time. And the thing is, so like in the time frame, so like the time that it slips from this point to this point was far faster than the time it would have taken a craft to get from this point to this point flying normally.
Yeah.
So like a craft that would go from here to here, it might phase out or like, disappear due to
like if it goes into a cloud or something. Yeah.
Yes. But then like it appeared down here faster than it should have. That's what got me, is the fact that it appeared faster, because I was just looking for a second. And like I said, it went a little bit in and then it disappeared. And all of a sudden I looked and it was down here. And I was like, oh, that went faster than I thought, than I thought it was going to go. Usually with the jet, you can see a jet go over the sky. You'll see it go from here to here. And if there's a cloud, you'll see it go through the cloud and come out the other side. But the time frame that it takes, to go from here to here, you can map. You're like, okay, you count a couple seconds or however long it takes. But that was almost darn near instantaneous in the way that it did it. I mean, it couldn't have been more than a couple seconds that I watch it drift out and then reappear. That's another thing that got me too, is the fact that it didn't take as long as a normal plane would to get to that spot. If there was cloud cover or something obstructing my view, it should have been timely there, but it was not. It was faster than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. And that's wicked cool.
I thought it's one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I have had about 3 or 4 good experiences. That one, and then the paranormal experience I had roughly that October, where I saw a black orb shaped, just about that big. We were in a room and Spider was there. I don't know if he saw it, but he can attest to me seeing this thing. And I remember we were at a place called the El Costa, which is in West Virginia. It's in downtown Sutton. It's an old like coal mining river town, so it's not very active anymore. We're there with some friends, and I remember we were upstairs. Third or second floor?
This was the
excuse me.
This was the third floor. Yeah, we were at the top.
So
third floor.
There's a pool. You go up the steps, and it's spaces. I used to be an old hostel. It used to be like an old hotel. You know what a hostel is? Like where people actually live in like a hotel style environment. And so I go up. I am watching. They got candles lit. The hosts have the candles lit. Excuse me. And I look over at the pool table, and there's a black mass about that big, about the size of a basketball, about a good size of a basketball. And I saw it, and I will go to my grave saying this. I saw it move from a point on one end to the other, and it just floated. And the reason I knew it was a black mass is because I couldn't see through it. Now, even though if a place is, there's curtains that are around a place that's black, that you'll be able to see things move, but you'll be able to see somewhat through them. You'll be able to see the light on the other side.
Yes.
I did not see this light. And our buddy, he brought a spirit box, and he asked how many people were in the room, and it said 5. There was exactly 5 people. In my head, I'm like, okay, maybe you happen to click, because the way his spirit box works, it runs through a bunch of FM channels and other channels quick, like a couple seconds turn, couple seconds turn. Said 5, and I'm like, okay, maybe you just happen mathematically to get on a point where you were like, okay, you happen to, because that's my brain. It'll always go to that first. But then I started hearing old-timey music. And that right there, that sent chills down my back. I was like, and I don't know, she might be listening, but she can verify. There's somebody here. I think if she's listening, let me double check. She might be listening. Yeah, she's listening. If she jumps on, she can 100% verify what I've said. Everything I've said, it can be verified. We heard it. I heard this old-timey music, because it wasn't like old-timey music. You could hear it plain as day. It was like I would best describe it as a mist, like a sound mist.
Oh, wow.
And in the backdrop, old-timey music. Like, I'm talking music that they don't play anymore, like old standards, but I don't know if you would call them old standards. It's just stuff that didn't have voices. It was like,
Oh yeah, like barroom, Western barroom music, like the piano.
kind of like that. Like I distinctly heard a piano sound, backdropped and all that, like that. And I have never and I haven't since, and I haven't really before experienced something of that magnitude. That was something that I've
That's
never
huge.
experienced. Because I've never, like, I'm always the first one to be like, okay, obviously my senses are heightened because I'm in a darker place. My brain already knows that this place was once very active with people. So, you know, everybody's like, it's haunted this, it's haunted that. I'm like, okay, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You know, I'm not going to say it is. I'm not going to say it isn't. But my brain is already in the realm of, okay, this might be haunted. So we have to prepare for things like that to happen. Doors to creak, things like that. Because doors creaking, that, you know, buildings settling, or, you know, the doors are on an incline, so the doors are going to move a certain way if you don't put something in front of them. But when I saw the thing and I heard the music and the spirit box said 5 and there was 5 people in the room, I was like, all right, you got my attention. That you got my attention, whatever it is.
That would have had my attention.
You have my attention. And it was only for like a brief window when this was active. After a certain point, nothing. There was nothing. So what I think, and this is me personally, you know, it is what it is. I think for that brief amount of time, there's probably like an hour, we had sort of, and I've said this about ghost trains before, we somehow shifted and had mixed with another reality. Mm-hmm. I could be wrong. Like I said, this is all conjecture for me. I'm just putting out there what I think.
Right.
Shifted somehow into that dimension for that brief period of time, and we're able to absorb some of the things going on. You know, the pool table, that area was active. So for something to move, you know, in a physical space was kind of fascinating. But then couple that with the old time music, because I heard it.
Yeah.
I heard it. Like I said, it sounded like a mist over the radio, the sound. And then behind that was like a piano, like, and I mean, it was to the point to where my hair was standing up on
I was going to ask, did you get
my arms?
Out?
I did. And I don't get creeped out very often. Like it takes a considerable amount of things. So for that to do those 3 things, and then nothing else the rest of the night. We didn't have anything else the rest of the night. It was just that. And that is what blew my mind. Like I have never, and I've always, it's weird because once it happens once, you want it to happen again. And so you kind of look for it. And I haven't had it happen since. And I've been in some places. I've been in the Mansfield Reformatory. I've been in the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. I've had feelings of places where bad things have happened. Sure, I've had feelings, but I've never been able to put the evidence with it. Like, you know, you go into Mansfield Reformatory, the tour guides already tell you the bad things that have happened there. Yes. You know, I would love to take somebody that has no knowledge of what that prison is or how the Kirkbride style was used to build that prison and take them in there and see if they feel the exact same things, because I'm already predetermined to feel it.
I've got to tell you, I have investigated at Mansfield 3 times. And I mean, I don't research where I'm going. I never research where I'm going. And the first time I went, it was for a public event. And there were some celebrity ghost hunters there from shows. And it was Stephen Tango, who I actually like investigating with them. I have a couple of times, and they are very good investigators. And they don't assume anything, which I like. But the other 2 times it was me, and one time it was 5 of us, and the other, I think it was 9. But a friend of mine rented it 2 years for her birthday party. So we investigated for her birthday, which I was very thankful for, because it was her birthday and she was treating us, right? But she is one of my favorite people to investigate with too. She's very, very good at it. So I've gotten some good evidence there, but a friend of mine told me that he had had an experience in a particular one of the cells, and that when he left, he had put a dot over the door, the top of the door jamb.
Right.
And so I didn't see it, but in the one that was next to it, my friend who was on her first investigation saw a man holding onto the door frame and just kind of leaning out, watching us go, because we were all women, and, you know, watching us go by. And that was kind of funky. And in the chapel, we had a whole lot of K2 and EMF, other EMF devices activity. And that was kind of funky to me because I wouldn't have expected that. When she plays music, she always plays period music. She's really big on Johnny Cash and Elvis, and, you know, it gets a lot of activity. But there were people dancing in the administration part of the building. I mean, it's really that's a very strange place. And the fact that it's still active with the other facility behind it.
Yeah. Yep.
Blew my mind.
Yeah, because I've only had feelings, and the chapel was the one place
Really?
where I had that feeling. I've only had the feeling because you go there. So what I think it is when you go with a lot of people, because I've only been on like one serious investigation. That was the one where that had happened. I've never been on an investigation other than that. Like, I went with people to the overnight, but it was like a mass group of people.
Right.
And a mass group of people, you're not going to get what you're looking for because there's like, 30, 40 people in one place. And that place, I mean, I'll say this, it is big, but 30, 40 people, you find out real quick that it's not as big as you think it is, because every time you turn a corner, there's somebody like, oh, well, nope, there's already somebody here. And those people are all investigating in their own way. And, with me, I want to see something. I want to see something else. I've already seen one thing. I want to see something else. And I don't want to have to be around a bunch of people. I don't mind going with like 5, 6 people. See, that's the ideal goal, is to go with like 5, 6 people that already know what they're doing. Cause I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm a very much a novice. I don't know how to do the equipment. I'm not going to lie. I'm not a ghost investigator.
But that's a lot of the people who get a lot of the evidence. Because you're not already tainted, you don't already go into preconceived notions of what should happen with this device, or, things like that. Right. I would much rather investigate with somebody who is a novice, who, sometimes you have to help them when they are, to understand, the value of being quiet during an EVP session, or, don't scratch your hair, because hair makes noise, or whatever. But, and they're open. They don't think that, they don't blow things off because, I've been there, done that. Well, to me, everything that I get is such a gift, because spirits don't have to interact. They choose to. Right. And, the last time I was at Mansfield was a little freaky, because my mom had recently passed, and on the way there we had gotten an EVP, because all of a sudden my friend's car smelled like laundry, right? And I'm like, oh, that can't be, because my mom used to constantly make my sister and I do laundry, and so the connotation was there. So I just turned my phone on and was doing an EVP, and my mom was in the car, and I was like, whoa, hi. We're on our way to go do this place, and you're welcome to come if you want to. But that's why I'm in Ohio, and here we go. But when we were in the solitary confinement down in the hole, there were no chairs, because the Paracon was the next day. This was on a night before. And both times, actually. But it was so weird, because I never felt threatened. I didn't feel any kind of danger. Somebody took a photograph, and there was a big black mass reaching behind me as I'm just walking along behind my friend to go look for chairs. But between me and this big black mass is a khaki and purple colored cloud, right? The cloud is the best I can do for a description. Right. I mean, it was just there. And my mom always wore red and purple. She did that whole, Red Hat Society thing
Mm.
that Southern
Right.
people do. I
Right,
guess people
right.
everywhere do it. But and she always wore khaki pants. So, I was just like, I'm glad I told her where I was going. Thank you,
Right.
Mom. But that was very surprising to me because there was, and only I had that black thing behind me. There wasn't any, it was reaching out. I'll send you that picture. You'll probably find it interesting. But
Please do. I'd definitely like to see it.
it was just one of those weird things that I didn't feel like I never felt like I was in danger there. I never have. But that was disconcerting when I saw the image, and I didn't see it until the next day when another the friend that took it sent it to somebody and said, "Should I show her this?" And they were like, "Well, yeah." So, but it was interesting because I'll always think that was my mom, right?
Right.
That was maybe, interceding for me or something. But that's the only time I've ever had an entity, if that's what it was, right there, visible on anything. So I don't get shadow pictures very often. I do get shadows in video a lot, but that's kind of fun.
Yeah, I've only had, like I said, that one experience. The other two that I had, the one at Trans Allegheny and the one at the bands for Forum Time were kind of tainted because I already knew about the place's history. And that's my favorite thing about going to these places. It's not so much if I see anything or catch anything. It's going to a place that has existed before I was born.
Yeah.
The history is my favorite part of any place I go to. That is like the coolest thing is be able to walk in the same place that people from like the 1800s and 1700s walked. And here I am in like the 2000 and some things walking in the same place that these people did. And if something cool happens, awesome. If nothing happens, the fact that I got to be there for that period of time in the time that we live in is my favorite part. If I don't see anything, fine. I still get the joy of going to a place that has had so much history behind it. And me and my co-host, we've been to a couple places like that. You go around the locks, you go up and down the locks, which are about 20 minutes from me. There was people that lived and died on those. They worked on them. Ohio is like real historic when it comes to the lock system. Boats coming in, coming down, they would go through, and people would be digging these canals. And when they fell over dead, you just bury them in the canal and you keep digging. And we have been up and down those. There's a coal mining town about 15 minutes from me called Rogues Hollow that we have been to that has had some activity there. Little lesser known places, but they're fascinating to me because they're basically in my backyard. These are places that are like directly in my backyard, and things have happened there. Me and my co-host, this was back in, what was that? How long ago was that? Was that like 2019, 2020, 2021?
Yeah, because we were going around in between when all the strict restrictions were going on.
That's right. It was right before. I think it was right before because I think
we went right before everything became moved from like guidelines to you have to do this, you can't go here, you can't go here, and then some things lifted in a couple places after that, and then we went, but it wasn't like completely out yet, so we were restricted to being outside rather than going into any places. And even recently, actually, we had that thing that we went to that ball field. That was basically that like an abandoned ball field.
Yeah, that's right.
And it had been okay most of that day. We'd said, okay, it's supposed to rain sometime today, but it looks like it's going to be fine. We're going to go check this place out because it was along like the canals and stuff, just like everything else. We go back there. Within a few minutes of us checking the place out, pours completely, just out of nowhere, just a storm, just soaks us to the bone.
Oh wow!
And it was just it was such a like the place looked like the kind of place where you might experience something. because it was all overgrown. It had that feeling that there might be some memories of people having ball games and stuff there.
Well, it was behind an old school too. Just make sure you preface
that was abandoned there too.
An old high school from like the 1800s. Mm-hmm.
And so while we're checking this out, we don't even get a chance to check for anything like that. We're just like taking video just to see what we can pick up, and then completely rained out.
Anyways, the Rogues Hollow story. Continue.
Yeah, we've seen some interesting stuff there. We went mostly in the summer. We wanted to go in the winter, but we couldn't get things coordinated this last winter to do that. But we found a lot of stacked rocks, which of course, could be people. Could be just people.
Could be. But these were intricate. These were really high. These were
really well done. Like somebody either had some excellent talent or it was something that wasn't the person doing it.
And they were far upstream too, to where like you had to have some serious waders to get upstream to do that. And they went down in a fashion. And then there was a ritual that was done further
on
down
the stump
with pink and white candles. So like it was like a love ritual or something. I don't know. I'm not real familiar with candle work.
It looked that kind of thing. It looked like it was.
It didn't feel like nefarious.
Like people making vows to each other or something like that. Because there was pink and white candle wax, and then there was like some shredded stuff around, but nothing that was like nothing had been sacrificed or hurt or anything.
Yeah, there was no blood or anything like that.
But somebody had obviously done something there, ritualistic. Yes. And so that was really interesting.
And it was on the same day we saw the rocks. So it was like we just kept seeing these things, and boom, here's
little interconnected.
Boom, more rocks.
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool.
The way the rocks were stacked and you forgot, we felt something watching us.
That's right. And the claw marks on the tree.
Yeah.
There's like a tree that had partially fallen over to make like a natural arch almost, and something had reached up and like scratched at it. The way like a cat would reach out and scratch out and sharpen their claws.
Right.
And
so that was interesting because then we were thinking, well, is there like dogman stuff out here?
Right. Or is there mountain lions? Is there mountain lions? That kind of stuff. A bear?
Yeah, we got a little bit into our imagination there, but
but oh my gosh.
And the fact that we felt
I don't think they were fresh. They were
us. We felt something watching us.
That was because
I go, do you feel that? And he was like, yeah. Like something's watching us. He was like, yeah, something's watching us.
And we looked 100%. Around, like we looked pretty close. Yeah. I mean, I've got glasses, but I've got pretty good eyesight with my glasses on, and I couldn't spot anything.
No, and it wasn't an animal. I didn't hear any there was nothing moving.
Yeah,
and obviously animals can do that. They can stay prone until they decide to attack, but nothing.
That's not a good thing.
No, not at all. But the fact that we didn't hear anything. We didn't hear anything. It just that feeling of like something does not want us here, mixed with seeing the stacked rocks, mixed with seeing that ritual on the ground. It was just like, what? And I went back that next year in February by myself, because that's intelligent, right? You just go back by yourself in February. And I walked around it. I walked back, and it's crazy because when it's summertime, the place looks like it's vast, it's endless, goes on for miles. Wintertime, you see what it really looks like. You could see the end of it from where you're standing right in front of the cabin house, which is fascinating to me because it's like, and the foliage and everything else makes it look bigger than it actually is. But then when everything is dead, you could see if anything's there, you're going to see it. You'll see it, almost on tune. And the fact that I didn't feel anything then, we went back, we didn't feel anything then. I've been back several times since, didn't feel anything then, didn't see anything then. And it used to be an old coal mining town. They had an old coal mining town where they would sell script, or where they would give people script, which is like the cash currency of coal mining towns. And they would, do all this and that. And the place was torn down except the mill. The mill is still there. There's an old police officer that lives there. So I can only imagine what he sees, but he's kind of like, I don't want to say disgruntled, maybe grumpy.
He, like, when we first told him we were just seeing what we could see, he almost didn't want us to be there. He was just like, oh, you're not one of them ghost hunters, are you? And he's kind of like, no, we're just looking. We're just checking stuff out. Relax. We're not going to cause trouble. We're not going to mess around with anything.
I was like, yeah, I used to come here when I was younger. He's like, oh, you're probably one of those troublemakers that was making the trouble I'm like, no, I've never made trouble. I've only made trouble a couple times and it wasn't there. No, it just being there because back then. So let me preface that by saying you couldn't go down there back then. It wasn't like now. It's basically like a I don't want to say
A historical site
It's a
almost, like just
historical.
a
It's a
local
site.
historical.
So it's like open
Yeah.
to the public. When I used to go, it was not open to the public, but that was a long time ago. And no, I didn't do anything crazy because it has a crybaby bridge. It has that crybaby bridge legend, and you drive across the bridge, turn your car off.
Everywhere. Everywhere.
Every single place.
You know, your experience was totally different from my experience because I live in Birmingham,
right,
where we have Sloss Furnace, right? And up until recently, you could go and do paranormal investigations and photography, do whatever, because it's beautiful. It really is. It is so neat.
Right.
But they have a new director who came in, and she was like, the paranormal community, blah, 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 blah. And we had some pretty heated discussions about it. As heated as like, but I was just like, without the paranormal, Sloss would probably not be there for you to have made it into this beautiful, wonderful museum.
Yes.
And the paranormal community is who put that on the map.
Yeah, because I didn't know about it until I saw Zach Baggins and his crew investigate it, and I was like, oh, I want to go there. Like that was one of the places that was on my list to go.
It is the coolest place to investigate because there's all kinds of really fantastic activity there. I have an EVP that has 3 different voices responding to one of my questions that I got there. And it's just really, that doesn't happen very often. Right. And one of them had profanity. The last guy that they were talking about used profanity. And I was just like, if I were on my laptop, my desktop, I could show you. I will send it to you and you can share it with people.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Or I will put it my Facebook after I do that, but you can put it in here. But it was funny because I had been hearing people walk around. I had a friend coming who had kids that wanted to ghost hunt, right? So I had already gone on in and was wandering around a little bit, had a recorder going, and I heard somebody walking above me up where the impellers are. And so I was like, who is that that's walking with those heavy boots, over my head? And I had a recorder going, but I didn't check anything because they came in, right? So I was home and I was going through my evidence and I got an answer to that. And it was this one guy who said, oh my gosh, what was the first thing the guy said? Oh, it was funny because I said, who was that was walking, blah, blah, blah. And this man said, and it was an older man. He was like, it's a bad customer. And this little guy goes, Yavo, just like that. And I was like, and I'm listening and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's German. And so then this other guy says, bad customer, eat poop.
The other word for poop.
Yeah. And I was just like, I have 3 men responding in one EVP. I can't believe this. So it was the best one. I've got a lot of really good ones, but it was the best one because it's my hometown haunt, right? I love Sloss Furnaces. It's beautiful when it's set up for weddings. It's beautiful when they do events there. They have a music festival there. They have a gumbo gala there. It's a fun place, but it's so awesome. And it's kind of, like you were experiencing, you just can't believe that you have access to something like that. And then all of a sudden, overnight, that changes. Right. And because of people who disrespect it. And
that's all it takes. All it takes is like a couple people to really ruin a good experience. And then that's it.
Yeah. And
so can you not go there anymore? Is it
you can go there. You can go there. It's a beautiful museum. They're treating it as a museum now. Mm-hmm. They've got a great, setup in the office. They they have a history of sloths video and stuff you can watch. And then they've got, oh my gosh, they've got so much going on in that one little teeny tiny building. But they've got a gift shop now and stuff like that. But I did know, Halloween is coming. We're getting toward the spooky season. Yes. And they're having a ghost walk there. Oh. But I think it's the gentleman in town who does all of that kind of stuff. He's very well respected and kind of good at doing a commercially adept thing. But he's good at what he does. So, and he got himself in there. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, because it's hard to get yourself in places. I've tried to get myself in a couple places and I've been told no. And I'm like, if I was just a little bit more popular, I bet you would have said yes. But because I'm not, you're not going to let me. But that's okay, because where one door closes, other doors open.
They do. And you know what's fun is people just roll with that. But if you go in and you say, hi, we are Robert and Spider from this Uncanny Earth, and we've been doing this podcast forever, and we have such a following, but we would really like to feature your location on our show. And why don't you come and tell us a little bit about it? And then we'll come and investigate. And I'm just saying, sometimes things like that work.
Might have to try that.
Sometimes we've gone into places where you're like, yeah, we're here. We do this thing. We got this podcast. We want to, ask you some questions about the place. And sometimes people are just like, oh, yeah, that's cool. Other times they'll look at us like, sure. Wait for so-and-so to come back and talk to them. Yeah. Okay.
I've had that happen a couple times.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll just ask, like, if it's not cool, it's not cool. If it is, it is. I have met, I went to a place where a girl said that the place was haunted. She had all these experiences. And I was like, cool, let me interview you here. Well, you can be on the show. I'll come to you. I'll come to this place of business and we'll do the interview here and we'll go from there. This was probably like 5 years ago. And she left me hanging. Didn't tell me, didn't text me, nothing. Literally left me hanging. I told you about this. And yeah, left me hanging. Didn't show up. I wasn't mad. I was like, okay, all right.
You can't be mad.
No,
not a priority.
You don't have. You don't care enough. That's fine. That's fine. That would have only helped your this establishment and the people around you, but you don't want to do that. That's fine. I'll take my skills somewhere else. It's not no skin off my back.
I just think that's I have never left somebody out in the cold. I have once, maybe twice, double booked people.
Oh, yikes.
That's so bad. But stuff happens on those rare occasions that you just really don't know what the heck. I don't understand how that happened, but obviously I had a brain poot here, so we're gonna have to please work with. And everybody is so nice.
Same.
As it's just like, because I'm always really upset by that. Like I say that like it happens a lot, but when it has happened, I've been so upset and disappointed. And but they came back and came on with me, and I'm so fortunate. I'm sure y'all, and this is going to sound like I'm tooting my own horn, but I'm not. But you don't invite people that you don't want to talk to.
Yeah, of course.
Be on with you.
Yeah, definitely.
And when you are trying to get somebody in a certain genre, it's sometimes it takes them a while to get back.
Right.
Especially if you're having to go through a handler or something like that.
Yep.
But don't y'all just love it? Because we get to talk to people who have had experiences that we're trying to have too.
Yes.
And we're so fortunate, I think, because y'all have done this forever and I've done it forever. And, it's just such a blessing to be able to talk to people who are at these, these amazing locations. And, I was in Scotland last July investigating.
Nice.
And you want to talk history, man? There was some history.
I bet.
And some friends of mine are the people from Scottish Paranormal and Rick McCollum.
Oh, we've had Rick on before. We know all about Rick. We've had Rick on. Thanks to you, by the way. It was thanks to you that we had Rick on. Like it was a few episodes after you, and I've stayed in touch with him here and there. But that dude always goes to Scotland. I think he just lives there at this point.
Well,
I think he just
he's going Wednesday.
There you go. There it is.
His apartment got destroyed in that storm.
Oh no!
His roof fell in and stuff. You should see the videos on his Facebook. It's crazy.
Yikes! I didn't know that. I mean,
he has to be somewhere for a month, right? While they're redoing his apartment. So he was like, you know what? I'm out. And it was either stay in a hotel here and, be stressed, or book it to Scotland and hang out with his friends there and, just live and live the best life. So that's what he's doing. But he is the person who connected me with them, and he was actually the ambassador for the trip I signed up for. I can highly recommend Scotland, cannot recommend the tour company. Just going to say. But really don't. It was terrible. But we got to see places because of Scottish Paranormal. We went to this place. It was an abbey that the town was Culross in Scotland. And it was an abbey that was like 1,400 years old. I mean, we don't have anything here.
No,
not
like that.
Not even close.
Well, we do have Native American things, but they're not massive like this, right? And the whole town was tiny. For some reason, we spent 7 hours there, but it was a lot of fun. But they had a palace that was like from the 1400s, I think. But I mean, you talk history when, Ryan Sprague of the UFO show, I can't think of the name of it. But anyway, he moved to Edinburgh from New York and does things there now. But that history is something amazing. So, the spirits there are everywhere. You can't throw a rock and not hit a place that's haunted. But, it's just because everything has been there forever. There's so much life that has been lived that whether you're talking, stone tape theory, whether you're talking actual cognizant spirits or, woodland beings, cryptids of all kinds. When I was in Culross, and I don't know if y'all know that the unicorn is on the Scottish flag. Mm-hmm. And so they're standard. And in the middle of the little thing was a obelisk with a unicorn mounted on it. And I was just like, that's a unicorn. And they were like, yeah, it's our national animal.
It's our national animal. Like, and it's so like, it's so in just like it's nothing. Like it's nothing.
Yeah.
Oh, that thing, that's just our animal. It's fine.
It's just like our eagle, right? Except I've seen an eagle.
I think me, like my big dream is to go to the Middle East. That's where I want to go.
Really? Well, now I would like to investigate there, but I would need to know it was safe.
Yeah, okay. Like that's the one thing they try to tell you. Like if you go to Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, there's a whole thing. I got a whole spiel about Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and Oman. There's an old an old ancient civilization that was collapsed in the empty quarter. I could go on for hours. We don't have that kind of time, but I could literally go on for hours about this I've been looking for this place for a long time, and I think I know where it is, but that's a whole different conversation to have. But
well, y'all will have to come in with me and we can discuss that.
I would love to. That'd be
100% facts.
That'd be great. But like you got to look in like travel advisories. It's a little bit worse. Yeah. It's a little bit worse for women, obviously, than it is for men.
It's unbelievable. Yeah.
Which kind of sucks. And there's a lot of like a lot of the places have a lot of political dissension, and you don't the number one rule of traveling to another country, never get caught up in political dissension, because that is just a one-way ticket for a jail sentence you're never going to get out of. So I've been researching it. Like, I want to go to these places, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't want to walk into something I can't get myself out of.
Yeah.
And some places are fine. Saudi Arabia, you can go to. I mean, me as a man, I'd be perfectly fine. It's Iraq and Iran that I'm a little bit more hesitant to go to. But Iran has so much Persian history and the Zoroastrians and everything else, but it's not.
So much is destroyed there, though.
But there's that isn't.
I mean,
and I think that that's what we have to really. While a lot of it has been destroyed due to extremism, which is unfortunate, that does happen. I would love to see what's preserved. Even if it's the smallest piece of the Persian Empire, even if it's just a small rock, and that's all I could see. I would go there just to see that rock because I've never seen anything even close to that old here in the United States or in my lifetime.
Yeah. Well, that's how I felt about Scotland. And the region that fascinates you so much fascinates me too. And I mean, it's where everything started.
Right.
And there's a reason that all of that history is so important, and that history is why there's constant war. So,
well, we have to remember too,
pretty interesting.
That's where it started when we recorded it. If we talk antediluvian, if we're talking pre-flood era, that's a whole nother animal that we have no idea. Because what I think is our civilizations, they climb so high, they get to a point of egotism, and then they fall, and then they build off the remains.
So, yeah.
And then once again, climb up, collapse, build off the remains. And I think that antediluvian process after the fact was us, because every single country has a flood myth. I could understand one and being like, okay, it's a myth. It's a tale that they told their kids so they didn't wander off into the bushes. They got taken by the flood. When you have Sumerians, you have Israelites, you have Islamics, you have pre-Islamics, which would be pagan Arabs that roamed the deserts long before Islam even was on the scene. Then you have Native American tribes that had it. You have South American tribes that had it. You have Hindu, you have Buddhism, you have all of these different places across the globe, not just in one centralized location that talk about a flood myth. You got to be like, oh, what was before the flood? What was before the flood? And they found very little of what was before the flood that we have been told. Once again, why would you let a whole civilization know what was before them if you can control them and control the narrative, control the information that comes through, you control the ideas that they think, the feelings that they feel. You don't let them know that one time your ancestors were great. You let them know that they came from apes or monkeys or things like that, when I don't necessarily buy into that notion, especially when you have pre-recorded things of these antediluvian kings, and you have the Sumerian kings list where all these people lived an exponential length of time, because mankind did live an exponential length of time at one point in our ancient past. But now we live, 120, I think, is the oldest person that sits in Okinawa?
Yeah. As opposed to the 600 and 700 years old of the biblical people.
And not just the biblical people. You have other religions, other cultures that talk about people living longer than just 120 years. You're talking 200-300 years. You're talking 400 years.
Or more. Something that I find interesting with that period that you're discussing, and I love this. I mean, this is fascinating to me, and you know a lot more about it than I do. But one of the things that I think is so cool is Phyllis Galdi, who owns Fate Magazine.
Oh, yeah.
Actually got to interview Zechariah Sitchin.
We almost got to interview his niece. We were on the cusp of interviewing his niece. Well, so another radio station or another like paranormal group that we don't see eye to eye with and here's the thing, we didn't
Not
do
that we
anything to
haven't
them.
tried.
We tried to extend the olive branch, tried to do what we could, and they don't want to do it. I'm fine with that. Leave me alone. I'll leave you alone. We'll do what we do. They got to interview her. So I'm like, oh, I reached out, and I have the email correspondence between the two. And she was like, well, I'm busy right now. And then I waited, and then I got back to her again. She's like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to. And I'm like, it's fine. You are Zachariah Sitchin's niece, so you are 100% busy. I get it. And then I reached out one final time, and she never got back to me, and I never sent out another thing. And that's fine. That's fine.
But maybe you should drop a line if it's been a while.
I think I might do that. I think I might be like, how are you doing? It's been a while. Just re-extend the invite to the show if you want to come on. Yeah, because that's me and my co-host. That's one of our biggest people in the field that things we've researched. Like he's one of the greats. Like that's the guy. Like
that is the guy.
That's the guy.
That interview is on YouTube. You should go and look at it.
I'm gonna have to because I've seen a bunch of his work, and like I said, his books. Let me see. Nope, this side. No, it's this side. Is it this side? I don't know. They're on the bottom shelf because I have that like arranged in the topics that I work on. Not to say he's bottom shelf, by the way. This isn't alcohol, but I arranged some stuff in the way that I research my findings.
Mine is I have piles. I have piles over here. I have a shelf over below the TV, and my husband is like, "How many books are enough?" I was like, "When I'm done, I'll let you know."
You should have like, that's not even the correct question.
I have an office downstairs that has the big tall shelves.
Yep.
And I have, because I've loved so many topics, right?
Same.
And I'm writing one, so you have to reference, right? So you just have to have everything you need at your hands. And
100%.
Plus, I love to read just for fun too. So
yes, I think we all do. And I'll go to a bookstore. All I need is a book to catch my attention. I remember one time I went in and and this is like almost a thrifty bookstore.
Yeah.
And like she cuts me deals because she knows when she sees me, she's got the paranormal, she's got all that good stuff in one area, and she keeps it stacked because she knows I come in about once a month. And as soon as she sees me, it's hugs and how you doing and how's the show? Because she's been on the show, and it's a local bookstore. And I had her, I'm like, come on the show. I love books. Yeah. Let's get you promoted. Let's see if people stop by. And every time I come in, she's like, I'm gonna cut him a deal because she knows I walk out of there with some serious books. I just bought the Gnostic Bible off of her. Like,
did you?
Yeah, I have a Gnostic Bible now that's sitting. Is it on? It's probably sitting on top, or it's sitting in the thing. I get on a topic and I research the heck out of it. I have multiple copies of the Bible. I have multiple religious texts. I go nuts because I want all the information I could possibly pull from it, because in the future I might need that information. So, and it has come in handy quite a few times. I
think that's a realistic thought process, is that it might come in handy.
Yeah. And there's books that I have that bore me to tears, but I have them for the simple fact of I need the information that's inside of them.
Yes.
Relevant to the topic at hand. I have math books just for the math that goes into some of the more intricate ideas and concepts of string theory. Because
I love string theory, but it's so. Do you know where I can't remember the name of it. Matthew McConaughey movie.
Interstellar.
I was in there you go. I was in the theater and I was watching it, and I was so struggling with, parts of that concept. And I'm watching and I was like, there you go.
Like, these are just two books that I've been looking through lately, just sitting I have books that I look through right to the left of me. So,
well, I was in the movie theater, and as all of the stuff is happening, and I was like, oh, that string out loud in the theater. I was so embarrassed. Oh, that's string theory. Oh my God, I get it. And it was so funny because everybody's like,
I get excited about it. I have three or I don't know how many books he's written. I have at least 3 books by Brian Greene.
yes.
I got Elegant Universe and
Yep.
2 other ones. And while he's I give him a lot of credit because he'll tell you the math coming up is pretty dense. Here's the basics,
Yes.
and then
Yep.
here's the in-depth. Do your best if you don't quite get it. And like that's talking to me because I don't get the density of the math sometimes, but I love to read it anyway because it's so interesting about how everything is connected on such a tiny level, on a subatomic level. Everything
Yes.
is connected, and it's
Yep.
fantastic.
It's amazing.
It is.
I think Michio Kakaku's books, they're also like, because remember we're talking about a physicist that is writing a book for a brain like mine, because I am not
Yeah.
on that level. Like him, I might understand the math a little bit better than he does, and that's not disrespectful. That's just we have
That's
our
facts.
strengths and our weaknesses. Like I can kind of get the math, like I can wrap my head around why it does what it does, but
Mhm.
then it gets a little too intricate, and I'm like, okay, if I don't stop staring at this equation, I'm gonna lose what I'm trying to get from this book,
Yeah.
and we'll be here, and I'll have to write it down and try to. I'm not gonna solve it, so I get it, and then I keep it moving to the next page. But string theory is phenomenal. It's a beautiful concept.
It is.
Beautiful
It
concept.
is. And it's well, just the whole mathematical process of it is so elegant, right? Because it's just everything plays, just everything. And I found when I started participating with UFO Twitter that a lot of the physicists there are very happy to try to help you to grasp what they're trying to get across or what they already understand. And it's like when I go to that Scientific Coalition on UAP Studies conference up in Huntsville, I am with, unbelievable minds. And they are so much better educated than I am, because if I had known and understood, because they didn't do STEM, when I was younger, that I don't have a STEM background, science, technology, and electronics and mathematics. I don't have that background. And I commented one day that, if I had known where my interests were going to take me, that would have been my study instead of paralegal, So it's just one of those things that one of the guys who is probably the best quantum physicist on the planet right now came in and just liked my I'm sorry, but I don't know why my watch started recording and talking to me, but right. So anyway, I watched him. He was like the top 20 under 20 to watch in Toronto at one point in his life, and he's very young, very smart, and his name is Deep Prasad, and he is somebody who shares through UFO Twitter stuff that I can go back and find a cross reference and get a handle on what he's trying to explain. And if somebody can find a way to get us into that world, that's who will do it. People like him and that generation, because people like Stanton Friedman and so many others like him have laid all this groundwork, right? And as things are evolving, we're going to be understanding the entire universe more. But first we have to understand here.
Right.
Before we can, do no harm when we go forth from here. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people get so pushed and rushed about getting into a different experience that they forget that you have to understand where you're coming from before you can know where you want to go. Right. And like with Star Trek, with their prime directive of, don't mess with it.
Right.
We are not a disciplined people right now.
No.
This, this level of humanity lacks discipline, and
Right.
it's primarily in this country more so than others, I think,
Right.
because we don't have a lot of discipline. But other than natural consequences, and even those are tempered now.
Mm.
But you have to understand that you can't just go somewhere and do something because that's what you want to do.
Right. It's
And
the adage of, you go into your house, you take off your shoes when you're in somebody else's house.
yeah,
You take, that's the thing to do. You
Mm.
take your shoes off when you enter into somebody's home, unless they tell you otherwise. Their house, and I apply that rule to everywhere I go. If I go to another country, my first thought is, that's their rules. I'm going into their house, and
And
that's my thought process going to any Middle Eastern country. If I go, which I will at some point, is
well,
I have to live by their societal rules. Yeah, it doesn't matter if I don't like it. If I'm over there in somebody else's house, I have to take off my shoes.
yeah. And it's just a respect thing. And right now we're kind of at a place where people are coming out of this pandemic. They're a little self-centered because they've been isolated.
Yep.
Their ideas have been all they've heard in a vacuum almost.
Mhm.
And because when we do social media, we talk to people like us. Whoever us is, that's who we gravitate toward. And so you lose a lot of the confluence of thought that you get if you're sitting in a coffee shop having a conversation with classmates who have different backgrounds than you do and different life experiences that they bring to the conversation. It's really hard sometimes to remember that not everybody thinks like you. And
Yep.
if they don't share the same opinion that you have, then it's not that they don't love you. It's just that they have different experiences that they bring to the conversation. And we have to get back to that, I think, so that we can come back and work in unity for the betterment of everything. We have to find unity.
We were on the cusp of becoming bigger. We had hit a point where it was time to make that jump. And we started to make that jump. We were right on the cusp of making that jump. We had everything behind us. We had built up enough people to where, okay, we're going to go forward with this. We're going to make it happen. Well, 2020 happens. And we lost a significant
momentum
of everything that we were doing. And it was at a point to where it was like, what are we doing this for at this point? We had reached a point where we were on the apex of just like moving to that next level. We had put in the grunt work. We had done all this. We're like, can't wait. It's going to happen. And then everything shut down. All these mandates came across the table, and
can't go anywhere.
It messed us up. Yeah. Like it ruined the momentum we had built. And I thought to myself, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going until either A, I'm dead, or B, I make it. I'm not going to stop. I don't have any plans on stopping. I don't have any plans on not reaching out to people. I am going to figure things out and see what I've wanted to see and get the answers I want out of life that I deserve, because I am a human being. I deserve the same answers as everybody else. Yeah. And if we have to build it up again and again and again and again, I will keep building. I will build like the ancient civilizations before us. I'll just keep building. I won't stop. I'm not afraid of failure. I'm not afraid to fall. I've fallen many times and still gotten back up. I'm not going to stop now. And, with everything that we've been through on this show and all the guests we've had you, we've had Rick, we've had people. I've had so many people on this show from different walks of life with little intricate pieces of themselves that they've left with us. Everybody leaves something with us when they're on the show. They always leave a little piece of themselves, and it's something that we can understand and move forward and apply what they know and apply what we know. And my whole goal in all of this, I remember one of my first goals was to get on terrestrial radio, because Coast to Coast was big for me. Like I grew up listening to Art Bell. Like 2, 3 in the morning. In Ohio, that's 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, Eastern Standard Time. It's not,
Yes.
the time that they're on Pacific time. So it's a little bit different. And I thought, you know what? I could do that. I know I could do that. I could do, and that's not to diminish what he's doing or what he did, rest in peace, but I could do that. And I know I could do that. I know I have the charisma. I know I have the ability to make that happen. And then I get all of these people like yourself who are a godsend. I look at all of you as a godsend because without all of you and without the audience, we wouldn't be here. And first and foremost, we have to give you guys the credit. Yeah, we do the legwork, we do the research, but without you, without Rick, without everybody else that's been around that, without Kevin and Jennifer Malik, who I have to, and Kevin will always be, he was a solid guy, rest in peace to that man.
Yeah.
He was one of the first people that had me on a show that was other than my own.
Yeah.
And that will always stick with me for the rest of my life. That will forever.
And that was a great show.
I love that show. We talked about Nikola Tesla. I still have the book that I used from that show. And then we had,
and they were one of them.
They were on my network, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
they were one of our first guests too.
Yeah,
one of our very first guests.
I just had Jennifer on again, like a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to tell you that. And do you have their book?
No, I don't know. Is it still available to buy? Because after it's
on Amazon, yeah.
Okay. Because I would definitely like to get their book. Definitely.
Well, because they've got all these 10 or 11 years worth of experience of their society, and then from Paraversal Universe.
Oh yeah.
The show information that they garnered through that, they were a brilliant team. They still are pretty much, because he is still with her. And it's funny because she'll call me and she's like, oh yeah, Kevin's there. And I'm like, here now, really? He's going to have to do some dishes. But, because we were such good friends, and I'm really, Kevin and I, believe it or not, we're very opinionated people. So we butted heads a lot on things. But
I could tell because he was very opinionated, but he was a solid dude. He was
solid. Well,
he stood on his ground, and I respect that.
He did, and I do too. And we had so much respect for each other. He was one of a kind, and such a special human being.
100%.
And so I love that your love is there too, and respect, because there's not many people that understand. Yeah, they lived in the Northwoods. They lived in the top of Wisconsin.
One of the weirdest paranormal places in the United States, hands down.
And I mean, we're talking cryptids. We're talking, like little people. We're talking weird stuff, and it's standard for people that live there. I mean, they know. And I did not. So I was constantly learning. Every time I talk to Jennifer, I'm constantly learning.
Well, I bought before she passed, God rest her soul, Linda Godfrey.
Oh yeah.
Who I absolutely loved. She was just she was such a nice lady. Like, she was just very nice.
Right? I mean,
I bought a couple of her books before she passed. And I was on the precipice of buying another. And I'm like, I'll get it. And then just time kind of got away from me. Yeah. And then she had passed, like, I think a year ago now, or like a year and a half.
Yeah.
And it's just devastating because like that was one of the premier guests that we have had on this show. Like somebody that had been that deep into something that wanted to be on our show. Like, that's my favorite thing is people want to be on our show. I look at it like this is just a show I love doing. I love doing this. I talk about this kind of stuff off air. I do this kind of conversation. I'm
it's
like,
just a bonus to get to do it on the air.
Let's get to it.
Yeah, get on it.
And so, like, to have people like you, Kevin, Linda, all these people that, people like that I didn't think existed in a wide spectrum, because growing up, you didn't talk about this kind of stuff. They labeled you a weirdo. But to be able to like have you and Kevin and Linda, and we've had Seth Breedlove, and we've had a whole slew of good people on the show that I love, that I've created lifelong friendships with. To see them succeed is my favorite thing.
Yeah.
Like, to see them grow, to see them become what they've always wanted to be is my favorite thing. Like, I love it. I love it. I absolutely love it.
It's a blessing, isn't it?
100%.
I think so too. You know, I think that's why we do these shows, right? So that we can experience that aspect of who people are. Even sometimes even introduce them to the field. You know, they may already be working in the field, but they may live rurally, or, you know, just in an area where there's not a lot of other researchers.
Right.
And when you bring them on and you give them a forum, or a platform, they can, you know, kind of expose themselves in their work, and then maybe connect with people that aren't quite so far away or have the same interests. And it's just, I think that's my favorite part of what I do, is that you can help build community.
Yeah.
You know, it's grow the community.
Yeah, and that's really what it's about. It's about the bringing people together and just like creating that. So like, they're like, oh, okay, well, this person was on this Uncanny Earth. Let's start listening to that show too. We'll put that in our data bank of shows. Now, boom, now we have 100 listeners or 1,000 listeners. There's 8 billion people on the planet. You mean I can't get 100,000 people to listen to the show?
There you go.
Come on, mathematics. Let's go. So,
you know, that's what's so funny. When I had a producer, it was always, I do not like a platform that I was using. And because I can never get numbers, right? Because they count, like the iHeart or the YouTube or Apple Music, whatever, they count all of those because they all download their own. So that's one download, everything that goes there. And so I would have like gobs of people that were communicating with me. They were in chat. They were, you know, messaging me with questions or whatever, because I let people do that. And then it would show that I had six listeners. And I'm like, no, because I went from 67,000 when I was being produced and using a different platform to this. I don't think so. You know, I don't think so. So it's really funny because numbers are, yeah, we want numbers, right? Numbers bring advertising, numbers bring bigger guests, numbers do all kinds of things for us, right? But what I found the most fascinating was that I did not have to fear, because people would let me know they were there.
right.
When I started feeling like, oh, hello, kitty. But it would be like, you know, no, we're listening. This was so great. Or somebody would message me about somebody that others might consider not as well known, but I found fascinating. So I had them on.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, oh my gosh, this so-and-so and so-and-so was just woo. You know, all kinds of different reactions that I would get about different people. So I knew the people were still out there.
Right.
And, you know, so I went through that like deflated ego thing for a little bit. And then I was like, you know what? I still get credentialed for things. So I know that people are listening, and I don't care. I'll just keep doing what I do and love it. You know, just love it. It's fun.
Well, we are about out of time, and I want to thank our amazing guest, Kat Hobsen, for being on the show tonight. It was fantastic. Usually we go an hour, but this was an hour and a half because I wanted to keep going.
It's like the old days. We always used to forget how, like, when the show was supposed to end, and we would just keep on talking.
We love talking about things like this, so it's like it fits perfectly. So thank you so much for being on. We appreciate you. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the audience before we get out of here?
I would just like for everybody to remember that, all of us are in this together. This is a community, whether you're cryptids, ufology, paranormal. I mean, everything is one. And we don't know exactly how they all connect, but I'm very certain that they do. And just get your spooky on, and whatever fascinates you, do it. But if you're going to do the ufology, start understanding some of the different propulsion methods so that you can recognize what maybe you're seeing around a ship. Or, there's all kinds of cool things out there. But mainly, have fun. Just have fun.
Well, thank you very much, Kat. You were amazing. We definitely would love to have you back on again for another maybe like 4-hour show at some point.
4 hours, I would probably need another Coke, but that's okay.
So thank you, Kat Hobsen. Thank you, everybody who listened. I appreciate each and every one of you. We would not be here each week without all of you listening in and listening to what we talk about. Sometimes we ramble on, sometimes we get right on point. It doesn't matter. We just appreciate you listening. Some upcoming things to look out for. On October 8th, I will be at Cheat Lake at the Veterans Hall in Morgantown, West Virginia for Les Odell's Case Expo. I will be speaking there. Probably about
8th
UFOs
or the 7th?
This time. I believe it's the 8th. That's a Saturday. Is that the 7th?
I had the flyer pulled up actually because I was going to remind you to talk about it, and then I closed the browser and it's gone again. I thought it was the 7th, but you might be right. It might be the 8th.
I mean, if we just look on the calendar here, we'll be able to ascertain the exact day there. Let's see. I got the calendar.
People show up like the day before, the day after.
It's the 7th. Sorry, it is the 7th.
Right. See, there we go.
Right.
See, I'm watching your back.
And been like, hey, where's he at?
Watching your back there.
So I'll be there at 7th. I'm not sure my slot time, but we got some good guests there. So make sure you come out for them. And then come out for me too. Why not? Come out for me. Last year I talked about Giants, and I've talked about Giants for like my past 4 lecture circuits. So I think this time we're going to switch it up to UFOs a bit because I don't want to stay pigeonholed into one idea. I want to branch myself out. So this way it brings in more people who want to come up to me out. Because my favorite thing about speaking at these events is the people that come up after the show and talk to me. And I remember a guy had talked about, the biblical giants, which I'm very well versed in. So that was very awesome. And I always appreciate people coming up to talk to me after the show. So I will be there on the 7th. And I will also probably be at another thing in Pennsylvania, either on the 18th or the 17th. I haven't gotten confirmation of that yet. So when I do, I will let all of you know. And and I really love speaking. So if you want to have me at your whatever, what have you, please contact me at thisuncanny@gmail.com. Please let me know. I would love to speak at any event that you all have coming up. I enjoy speaking. I mean, I have a show where I enjoy hearing myself talk. So that should just be enough for most of you. Anyways, join us next week. We'll be talking about the biblical patriarch Noah, or in other religions and beliefs, he is known by other names. We'll be talking a little bit about the flood too, and Noah. So join us next week for another amazing show of This Uncanny Earth. Thank you to Kat Hobsen. Thank you to my co-host Spider. And as always, why be boring when you can be uncanny? We will see you folks next week.